What is religion? As often as we talk about it, conversations rarely seem to begin with a definition of religion, something that is usually necessary for any discussion to proceed with focus and clarity. But the problem is that different people have very different ideas of what makes something a religion, and these ideas may occasionally suffer from value bias. Many do not consider Scientology to be a religion, labeling it instead as a scam due to its financial policies or beliefs. On the other hand, some Christians who dislike the religion label may apply it to Islam, Judaism, and other beliefs as a means of suggesting that they are inferior man-made products. Value bias is more common than we think, and it clouds the judgment of many people who offer their own interpretation of what makes a religion. The purpose of a definition is not to determine if the concept being defined is true or false, but simply to accurately and adequately describe the given phenomenon. Before we can make any value judgments, we have to know what it is we're talking about. One way of finding this out is by looking at the etymology of the word. There are two lines of thought regarding the origins of the word religion. The first and most common that I've seen is that the Latin word religio comes from the word legere, which means to bind or connect. So religere basically means to reconnect, possibly indicating an idea of reconnecting with the sacred from which we have come. The second line of thinking espoused by Cicero in the 1st century BCE is that religio comes from religere. It's proposed that the word actually means to read again or to re-examine, as in the careful consideration of the sacred. Another way of attempting to understand religion is to look at the numerous examples of it in the world and see what they have in common. A definition that leaves out major religions or that only fits a very small subset of them can hardly be called useful. In an exchange on my channel page, a Christian recently tried to tell me Christianity is not a religion because religion is the idea that you can bribe God. There are many problems with such an overly simplistic definition, but the most obvious one is that no religion thinks they bribe their God. So you are left with assuming the believers lie about not bribing their God, and that you have a greater insight into their own motives than they do. From this, combined with the negative connotation of bribery itself, we can see that this person's definition of religion has a very clear value bias to it. When it comes to defining religion, there are two primary kinds of definitions, essential and cluster definitions. An essential definition tries to get to some universal quality that makes something what it is. They are further broken down into substantive and functional definitions. A substantive definition states what religion is, while a functional definition states what religion does. Belief in the sacred would be a substantive definition, and belief that gives purpose to life would be an example of a functional definition. The downside to essential definitions is that they often turn out too narrow or too broad, because of the difficulty of condensing so many varying belief systems into one definition that captures the essence of them all. So a cluster definition takes the opposite approach, assigning a number of attributes or traits to religion. Rather than being seen as the essence of religion, these traits are often seen as notches on a scale, making something more likely to be religious the more characteristics it possesses. Personally, I favor the cluster definition, which I recently used for a paper in my comparative religion class. The definition of religion that I propose consists of the following attributes: the belief in the sacred, the distinction between the sacred and profane, rituals, moral codes, prayer, and unique sentiments structured around the sacred, an overarching view of the world and the individual's place within it, and a community group that centers on the aforementioned. A religion need not possess all of these traits to be recognized as a religion, but the more that one has, the more like a religion it is. A system that includes none of these attributes would not constitute a religion. The strength of this definition, I believe, is in its flexibility. To show this, let's look at each individual trait and see how it corresponds to well-known religions. First, belief in the sacred can mean belief in gods and other supernatural beings, but can also include belief in non-supernatural sources of mystical or transcendent value. Thus here the sacred can be Yahweh, Zeus, Brahma, Buddhist Eightfold Path, Karma, Thetans, and so on. By contrast, deeply appreciated things like wisdom, music, or even sports would not be considered sacred because they are not mystical or transcendent in value. Though some people may profess a spiritual connection with football or a belief that music transcends human experience, I contend that these expressions are metaphors reflecting deep appreciation rather than real psychological states of belief. In many cases, one is drawing those feelings from a religion, as when a Christian may feel a transcendent mystical experience from worship music, yet this does not make music itself a religion. What about a distinction between the sacred and profane, and how does this differ from belief in the sacred? The difference is that religion believes in what it considers sacred, yet shuns what it considers profane. This can take the form of good against evil, God versus the devil, positive and negative karma, or may even feature a more abstract idea of the profane, like selfishness or defiance of the sacred. Traits 3 through 6 cover certain practices and feelings that are characteristic to religion. Rituals may include rosary beads, meditation, worship, communion, and other actions intended as an act of reflection on the sacred. Many religions like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Mormonism offer their own moral codes which believers are instructed to live by. Even non-theistic religions like Buddhism and Jainism have these codes of conduct that are aimed at minimizing suffering or achieving enlightenment. Some religions may see prayer as a ritual solely for the benefit of humans, but others, especially the monotheistic faiths, consider prayer to be communication with supernatural agents, which is the more general use that I also favor for this definition. By unique sentiments, I mean distinctly religious feelings that provoke reflection on the sacred, such as awe, wonder, adoration, guilt, blessing, etc. An overarching view of the world and the individual's place within it means that one's belief in the sacred informs their perspective. Beyond moral codes and various rituals, a religion can affect an individual's entire outlook, bestowing upon them unique ideas about purpose and meaning, life and death, peace and comfort, and so forth. And last but not least, there is community that centers on some or all of these attributes. As social animals, most of us feel a strong need to connect with others, and religion has helped to facilitate group interaction for many centuries. A community can be a congregation, a study group, or any other social structure that meets around a general focus on the aspects of the sacred I have already discussed. We see this definition can accommodate religions as diverse as Islam and Taoism, Buddhism and ancient Greek religion, Scientology and Jainism. And yes, this means that Christianity is a religion too. It doesn't matter if one tries to redefine it as a personal relationship, a faith, or anything else, because this definition of religion integrates those ideas into it. It is a belief in the sacred that leads a Christian to think that they have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and this belief is logically prior to that relationship, whether you consider it real or illusory. As a side note, it's also worth pointing out that Christians are certainly not the only ones to claim that their religion isn't really a religion. The definition of religion in these cases is usually something to do with a man-made nature. But again, what religion thinks it is man-made, that it doesn't connect to some higher truth? One thing not identified as religion by my definition is atheism. This isn't just because I'm an atheist, but because atheism is not a religion in any practical sense of the word. It does not feature rituals, prayer, a moral code, or uniquely religious sentiments. There may be atheist communities, but they do not center on the sacred, and there is no more of an overarching worldview in atheism than there is in not believing in Santa Claus. Some may try to argue that there are sources of mystical or transcendent value in atheism, but this is untrue. Atheism is simply the absence of theism or the lack of belief in a god. Additional views may be held, but they are not part of atheism itself. Finally, one of the popular unscholarly definitions of religion is that it is an institution. This is not necessarily put forward with value bias, but it does fail to describe a large number of religions like Taoism, Buddhism, and even Islam, for which there is no institutionalized authority. I don't think that institutions are a core component of religion. There may be institutions of education, but it would be wrong to conclude from this that education is an institution, because learning certainly goes on outside of educational institutes too. We don't get much of a picture of what religion is when we define it as an institution. What are all these other non-institutional things that look a lot like religion? If we have to come up with a second term for them, we should reevaluate our definition of religion, especially our reasons for making the split. In closing, I'd like to remind us all that the study of religion has been going on for quite some time, and though I provide a definition of religion here, it is certainly not the only one. The aim of this video has not been to discount other scholarly definitions, but to question a handful of unscholarly ones, and to provide one example of a well-framed definition. No definition is flawless, yet I believe some are definitely better than others. With as accurate and adequate a definition as possible, we can make stronger and clearer statements and arguments in our discussions about religion.